Hello, this is Pam. I am. Oh, you didn't? Yeah, hi, Kathy. That's weird. You know what? I sent it about an hour ago. Tell you what, it's Cat and something, right? I'll I'll forward again. All right. Oh, thanks, Kat. Sorry about that. All right, bye-bye. There we go. See if everybody's able to join us. And we had a little bit of problems getting our meeting invitation sent out tonight. Did everybody? Well, clearly everybody who received it is here. I'm just checking to see. I just got a phone call that a couple of people didn't get their invite. So we'll try to proceed a little slowly as we start out tonight in case there's some people that are still trying to join us. And tonight's plan is we're going to, so some of you were able to join us last week and some of us weren't, and I apologize for that. I think I kept getting a message that the internet connection was unstable, and it was weird. About half of the people that I sent the meeting invite to received it, and the other half didn't. And so I don't know if, you know, if the internet connection shut down halfway through the send or what, but we are going to review a little bit of what we talked about last week. We're going to focus on an issue that we discovered during our vacation up to the Upper Peninsula. So with that sort of a tantalizing preview, we're going to get this show on the road. We're going to start off here with our usual screen share and our usual opening segment, if I can find it. Where is it? Nope. Hold on. That's not it. Bear with me here, folks. There it is. All right, let's start this from the beginning. Well, you know, you've seen these pictures before. Like I said, I say every week, one of these days we'll go through one of the stories behind it. But in the interest of time, let's move ahead and get to the heart. These were some of the videos that I tried to show last week. So I was up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan at our family's cabin, on the river. The river was super high while we were up there. We'd had a lot of rain, and there wasn't a great deal of opportunity to explore the river. But here's a cabin. This was built in the late 1950s by my dear Aunt Jenny and Uncle Hubie. They've left us now, but the cabin is their legacy to the family. I have to be honest, it was a place that I spent much of my time, my growing up years at, but I'd spent close to 20 years since I'd been up there. And the really great thing about the cabin is that the more things change, the more things remain the same. This porch, they have updated a little bit. They put some storm windows in. These just used to be screens. But that view of the river just is, it never really changes. Now, I did get a little grumpy. My friends, Bonnie and Jesse, that were with me, they got tired of maybe, you know, hearing me complain, because one day I think we saw 3 boats going up and down. The Menominee River is much like the Fox River in that it's a fairly small river and it's fairly shallow. So boat traffic is not frequent, but with all the rains that we've had, the water levels were up, so that allowed boats with motors to go up and down. I also found out from my cousin, who's a year-round resident up there, that it was sturgeon season when we arrived. Sturgeon season ended on September 30th, but sturgeon, if you've not heard of them, they are a very large, primitive fish that live most of the year in Lake Michigan, but they go up into Lake Michigan's tributaries to spawn, and the Menominee River happens to be one of those rivers. So it's a pretty short season. I believe it's 1 month long, and I believe the minimum size for these fish is 6 feet. So anyway, yeah, we did see a few boats on the river, but you can see, you know, looking at the panorama here, that there's really not much in the way of traffic or neighbors back here in this little chunk of heaven. So just to orient ourselves again, I was up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, but really it's the southeastern part of the UP. To give you an idea of latitude-wise, this would be south of Eagle River and some of the more popular resorts in western Wisconsin. And if we zoom in here, we can see we were just about here on the river. So over here is Green Bay, part of Lake Michigan. The sturgeon that we mentioned, they come up the Menominee here to spawn and reproduce each year. And the cabin is right, let's see, there's a shaky, we're right about here. You know, it's the water level, so that the water level is quite high. And some of that has to do with this facility here. This is a power dam that was built in the 1930s. It's called White Rapids. I tell you, I've seen it in a lot of different phases over the years, but this wall of water here in the middle, that had to be splashing up close to 20 feet. I mean, the water was really raging. They open the locks as a means of helping to control the water levels upstream, but then that does impact the water levels downstream. There were a couple of guys that were fishing here the day that we visited, because sturgeon, you know, as they're migrating upstream, they're going to hit some impediments along the way, like that dam. So below White Rapids was actually a pretty good place to fish for sturgeon, if you happen to find yourself up there sometime. Now, where we were, this is to give you an idea of the kind of traffic that we encountered. Here's now deer season, shotgun and rifle season hadn't started yet, but we were up there at the start of bow hunting season. That's the kind of traffic jams you encounter up here. Now, this was one of the gravel roads that we drove on from time to time. There was a couple of paved roads too. This one, for instance, this leads back, this is called River Road, and it leads back towards the town of Stevenson, which is the closest town. Oops, let me go back. Try to get that to play again. Here's Tech Support Puppy demonstrating how wide open it was there. My friends Bonnie and I and Jesse, we walked down this road. It's about 3-mile round trip to get down to a popular fishing area called the Tubes. The Tubes are actually a tube dam that dam up the Shaky River and form a series of fishing lakes. That was our big mileage day. 3 miles, it was over 10,000 steps. I'll show you in a few slides the day that we went 4,000 steps in 4 hours. There's just so much to see up here. Tech support puppy, while we were doing our 3 miles, he did about 10 miles because he would just kept bounding in and out. I was really glad, by the way, that I gave him his dose of flea and tick medicine before we went up there. I had one deer tick on me during the course of our time up there. I found it as it was crawling. It wasn't stuck down. And then when I was brushing him after we got home, I found a couple of dead deer ticks in his fur. The way those tick medicines work is the dog ingests what is basically an insecticide or a miticide, arachnicide, and when the tick bites the dog, the tick dies. So I did find some dead ticks on him when we got home. So I was really glad that I dosed him before we went up there. Ticks are a problem even up here in Paradise. So it's also the kind of place that's a real throwback. This is, they have metal slides. This thing had to be, 12 feet tall or so. It was such a joy to see a playground as I remembered it. Some of you might remember the old slide at Potawatomi. I don't think this one was quite as big as that tall slide that Potawatomi used to have, but it's the main advantage of this one is that it's still there. So Jesse and Bonnie and I I'll take turns sliding down at a time or two. But that's the kind of feeling you get when you go up to this part of Michigan. It definitely is a step back in time.
Can I interrupt you for a second and ask you about something?
Absolutely.
About ticks. Just
yes.
Because I went out on a little walk on, I think it was Saturday, and I had 2 ticks on my pants. What do you recommend for ticks? These were deer ticks.
So yes, DEET is Sylvana, DEET is what everybody's, or not pure DEET, but a repellent spray that has DEET in it, DEET, that's the abbreviation for the chemical that is the repellent. And then other things like tucking your pant legs into your socks. Now that doesn't work for chiggers. A couple of months ago, we were talking about chiggers and what a menace they are. They don't carry the diseases that ticks do, but if you can tuck your pant legs into your socks and then give yourself a good squirt of DEET, repellent spray that has DEET in it. That's the safest thing to do. There are other things that some people recommend. There's some essential oils that some people swear by, but DEET is what I know our risk management agency recommends we use. There's also some chemicals, and I'm gonna have to think for a second here. Tech support puppy just came in here with my office mate's dog bed, so I've got to wrestle that away from him while we do our program. Sorry. I believe it's permethrin. There are some laundry additives that you can add. You can wash, if you're going to have certain clothes that you wear outside, you can wash them, and I believe it's permethrin. But Sylvana, I'll check on that later, and if anyone else is interested too, I can send you the link. This was a concern of our risk management agency at the start of our outdoor season in the springtime, because last year the Park District did sustain, a lot of staff sustained deer tick bites. And so to try and prevent that, they gave us a bunch of recommendations. So I can send that info to you, Sylvana, if that would help. All right, any other questions about ticks? If not, I want to tell you about a magical little place called 60 Islands. And again, this area is a place that I've been going to. I started going here when I was just a little kid, and I always thought of this place as Thousand Island because I knew that was the salad dressing they served at the supper club. But I asked my cousin and she confirmed it is indeed 60 islands. Now, I knew of it as the canoe launch site. It's a place also on the Menominee River. It's a mile or two upstream from where the cabin is. And it's a quiet stretch of water, and it does indeed have a lot of islands to it. There's some backwater areas like this. It's also across from a area in Wisconsin that was very, very important. Both the Menominee, the Michigan and the Wisconsin side of the Menominee River were very important to the Menominee tribe. So there were some ancient dance rings that can still be seen over on the Wisconsin side. And on the Michigan side, there are quite a few sites that were determined to be old burial sites. This will all be important information in just a few more slides. This is a picture taken from an exhibit that's online that has to do with 60 Islands history. The people of the Menominee tribe actually had a relationship that was kind of on again, off again with the Ojibwa. The Ojibwa actually referred to the Menominee as the sturgeon eaters, and there was a couple of legends that referred to 60 Islands. One talked about a beautiful maiden and her dream about this kind of like a promised land called 60 Islands. There was another one that was called the legend of the owl in the forehead, where when the Menominee tribe members went down to talk to one of the Ojibwa members that was down at the mouth of the Menominee where it empties into Green Bay and Lake Michigan, and because the Ojibwa had dammed the Menominee up so they could catch more sturgeon and or catch more fish, and it turned out kind of ugly. The young Menominee tribe member ended up going home with an awl stuck in his forehead. But anyway, there's lots of neat cultural history associated with this area that, again, until recently, I thought was just the canoe launch. It's the kind of place where you'll see trees like this. Now, this tree was, oh gosh, I would say it had a diameter of more than 3 feet. If you look closely at the branches as we go up, this is an arborvitae, a northern white cedar, the tree of life. It was enormous. And let's look at this trunk again. I don't know, these trees are pretty slow growing. I would estimate this was hundreds of years old. Just really a fabulous looking tree. And look, it has a little face in it too. So that greeted us down by the water. Another tree, a few trees that we ran into here. This is something that we see somewhat infrequently, but we do see it here along the Fox River too. It's called the mussel or the blue beech. And you can see by these striations here, it's got a very thin bark, but the bark actually looks like the sinew of a well-muscled person, or actually I tend to think of a picture like a horse's leg. Yeah, let's go back again. Let's watch it one more time. Blue beech like to grow in areas of rich, moist soil, and that's exactly what 60 Islands has. Now you can kind of see what the forest floor looks like here. Here's a better example too. You know, here in Illinois, northeastern Illinois, we work a lot on ecological restoration, and it's a somewhat new science. It's also sometimes kind of controversial because different land managers have different ideas of what they're trying to restore their land to, whether it's pre-settlement time, before the settlement of, before the European settlers came to the area. As the science has started to mature, we've learned that just because the European settlers hadn't showed up doesn't mean that the land wasn't being managed by the indigenous people. They too work the land to meet their needs. Some land managers are now saying, well, you know, it's only logical because people aren't going away. We need to restore it to a point where the land is functioning, but we're not going to be able to erase all the traces of human activities, whether it's the types of plants we're seeing there. I think we all agree that getting rid of some of the introduced invasive species is probably a good way to go. But I tell you, walking around 60 islands here, we were hard pressed to find anything that looked non-native or invasive. Some of you, if you've ever tried to punch through some of our local woodlands going off trail, you'll know that you're not going to get very far before you're running into honeysuckle and buckthorn, which are two introduced species in this area. Even the native raspberry brambles can be kind of aggressive in their growth habits, and they can make it difficult to walk through the woods without getting scratched up or having to do some heavy duty bushwhacking. But look at how open this forest floor is. And we were able to walk around. This was the day we did our 4,000 steps in 4 hours, because it was just one absolute marvel after another. This little plant here, some of you might recognize it as hepatica. This is a spring wildflower. It's one of our spring, I guess you'd call it an ephemeral, because it blooms and then it goes away. But up there, it was putting on, we could still see the leaves readily, even though it's almost time to get, it's going to get covered with snow very soon up there. But this is the sort of plant that in our woodland restorations down here, we might hope to find a little clump here or a little clump there. And this hepatica was just about blanketing the woodland, the floor here at 60 Islands. Every time we turn around, we find new clumps of it. It was just really amazing. And this was another kind of a cool find. I was on a mission to find a hen of the woods mushroom. I should mention it was kind of cool up there. The whole week we were there, it was kind of rainy too. And I thought, what could taste better than a hen of the woods cooked in butter? It would warm we would warm ourselves from the inside. Plus, it was kind of a fun goal to have. Well, I didn't find any hen of the woods while I was there, and it occurred to me later that around here, it tends to grow at the base of white oak trees. And what we were seeing there were primarily red oaks. And then, of course, a lot of conifers as well, pine trees and the arborvitae and plants like that. But I tell you, I was looking at the base of all the trees, and what should I see at the base of one of these trees but a blue spotted salamander. Now, around here in Kane County anyway, we do not have blue spotted salamanders. It's not to say they're not in Illinois. They're actually pretty common in Lake County and in other counties around the state. We just, for some reason, they're not found here in Kane. In Michigan, they are considered fairly common as well, but boy, the day we were tromping around there, I would say it was maybe 50 degrees. It wasn't a warm day by any means. I think this little fellow was out trying to maybe either get ready for winter by getting one last meal that it could process and then void it through its system, or it was just focusing on the voiding part. As these animals head into their wintertime dormancy, they want to make sure they don't have any food that they're digesting in their system, because if it were to go bad over the course of the winter, the animal would go bad too, and it wouldn't survive. So anyway, he was a neat little find. Probably not full grown. This salmon, I didn't, for some reason, I didn't think to put my lip balm next to it as the usual standard of measure. But I would say it was about 3.5, 4 inches long. So little guy resting there on that wonderfully lush carpet of moss. But boy, let me tell you about the fungi. So they've been having higher than usual amounts of rainfall up in the UP and points north. So that is going to contribute to a really robust and a really diverse group of different types of fungus growing. This one now, it's not rare, and it is something that you can see down here from time to time, but it's a type of fungus called dead man's fingers. There's a few different species that go by that name, but I thought this was kind of appropriate given the time of year we're heading towards Halloween, and dead man's fingers just gives you that creepy sort of sense that we're in October and it's that time of year again. But the fungus grows up out of dead wood and takes many different shapes. This would actually probably be 2 hands worth of dead man's fingers. Sometimes it almost looks exactly like a hand with a thumb and 4 fingers coming up, but very cool find growing out of one of the logs on the ground. And then this one was really neat too. I had not seen this one. It's called icicle fungus. And I kept thinking it looked like stalactites that you'd see dripping from the roof of a cave. But this was also growing on dead wood. I didn't see it on any living species. I did just a little bit of research, and there's several different species that go under the name icicle fungus. I wasn't about to try and narrow this down to species, but it is Hericium is the genus, if any of you are interested in exploring it further. But really, really cool. It looks just like, you know, dripping icicles after a really heavy snowstorm, doesn't it? Very cool. Then jelly fungus, we have this around here too, but we kept seeing these big, small, but very, very bright blobs of yellow here and there. These jelly fungus, they puff up when there's a lot of moisture in the air, and then they recede down to almost nothing. It almost looks like a little scab on the twig when the moisture leaves. But like I said, there was plenty of moisture up there, so we saw lots of cool jelly fungus. Now, we saw a number of trees that looked like somebody had just gone bonkers with the hatchet. This was one extreme example here on the left, and then this tree in the center too. I got to be honest, Bonnie and Jesse and I were all kind of hoping that we would find a porcupine, because porcupine do occur in these woods. My cousins and I over the years have seen, I think there's 6 of us cousins, and I think all combined we've seen about 6 porcupines. And that's over a span of like 50 years. So it's not like they're super common, but they do occur. And I was really getting my hopes up when I saw the center tree and the way, but then I thought, you know what, it's not how a porcupine would attack a tree. As I got up closer and I saw the work, it was one of these guys here. This is the pileated, or I know up here a lot of people say pileated woodpecker. When I first learned about this bird, I was down south, and everybody down there says pileated. And let's be perfectly honest, I love pie way more than I love pills, so I'm going to stick with that southern pronunciation. But these birds they're about the size of a crow. This is a female. The male would have a little bit more red here by his beak. And by the way, I did not take this photo. We kept looking for the birds, but we didn't actually see them. But I dropped this in so you know what we're talking about. Massive beak, able to really riddle a tree. Pileatids are known to create a rectangular shaped hole as they mine these trees, mostly dead trees, dead or dying trees, for insect food. They have really keen hearing, so they can listen in for the gnawing and chewing sounds of larvae and ants. And they'll just really go to town and find an abundance of food as they start knocking around. Now, as I said before, you know, with the restoration efforts down here, we try to clean up our woods, get rid of the things that have been introduced, but we're going to always have signs of human impact. And up there, we really weren't seeing any until we came across these trees. We saw from a distance, we saw this blue spray paint, these blue markers on these trees. And there were these bearing trees that were marked here and there. In fact, this tree, it was kind of funny. It said that if this mark is endangered, please contact the surveyor's office. This tree was really dead. You can see the amount of fungus growing on it here. So I don't know who chose that, if they were just kind of having fun at the surveyor's expense, but this did give a major clue that something is up with 60 Islands. And this is where I'm letting you guys know about it. So you can maybe help me figure out what, if anything, can be done. Islands, as it turns out, is on the radar of the Aquila mining company. It's kind of ironic. Aquila is actually, it means eagle, but this new mining company, which they build themselves as North America's next zinc and gold producer, has found that there's quite a bit of gold ore and zinc, probably some copper too, basically a lot of precious metals in this pristine Northland. And they, for the last several years, have been pulling their resources together, getting investors lined up, and they want to create a very large, very deep mine to get that ore out of the ground, out from the river. And their project maps pretty much encompass 60 islands. Now, being good little nature nerds, Bonnie and Jesse and I did go to the Stevenson Library Friday of our trip. One, we were being good little nature nerds, and two, we were just cold because the cabin doesn't have a lot of heat. So that dark, rainy day, we went over to the library and did some investigating to find out just what's going on with the Aquila mine. We also talked to some local people in the area. And, you know, as things go like this, you know, there's a lot of money, there's billions of dollars to be mined from these deposits that are deep beneath the surface. And it will bring jobs to the area, but it's also gonna do, it's gonna leave some marks. Now, Aquila in all of their publications talks about all the steps that they're taking to contain the tailings and the wastewater that's going to be generated by this project. The problem is this is a really wet area. This is all wetlands through here. And, you know, wetlands, water is very close to the surface in a wetland, and water is going to travel throughout this area. So even if they're containing what they're bringing up out of the mine, if they're sequestering the hazardous materials that they're removing, or that they're using as part of their mining operations, I still have a feeling that there's going to be some contamination. Now, they say there isn't, but there is a lot of opposition to the mine too. So the whole project right now, one good thing about COVID, Aquila is a Canadian mining company. It's also a very new company. I believe this is their first project. So COVID has delayed their crossing of the border, going back and forth. They also are having a little trouble getting one last green light on some of their permits. There's also something we learned about called a social permit, and it's not governed by any sort of regulatory agency. It's social permit just means the feeling of the communities where the mining is going to occur, the society that it's going to affect. And there, like I said, there is a lot of opposition. We saw a lot. There's probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 different groups that are opposing the mine for various reasons. Of course, the Menominee tribe has been very vocal because this is sacred land for them. Those burial mounds, remember how I said we've got the the former dance rings and villages over here on the Wisconsin side. Over here on the Michigan side, we've got a lot of burial mounds that are going to be affected by this project. If you'd like to learn more about it, I was trying to find, you know, because we've got to be careful of our sources and make sure that we're not reading something that's biased one way or the other. This particular website here, back40film.com, seems to have a pretty good collection of news articles detailing the various ups and downs of this mine company, its permitting process, the various oppositions that it has encountered. There's also been legislation passed to kind of help this thing along too, and you can read about that on this website as well. But it's an interesting thing. It wasn't something I'd really counted on or planned on seeing. I had no idea that this was happening so close to this pristine area. So, like I said earlier, if some of you have time to look over some of these news articles that are contained on this website, I would love to hear back from you to see if there's anything Flatlander like me, an occasional visitor to the area, could do to help stop this mining effort, because it just, I don't know, it just seems like it's gonna mess things up. Anyway, don't want to focus too much on bad things, because we're going to switch gears now. We've got just about 15 minutes left here, and I wanted to bring us back to Illinois. I'll sum up the rest of the trip next week. I've got some more different things I can relate that's going on in Michigan, what's going on in Michigan to what's going on here in Illinois. It has nothing to do with gold mining. Some really cool things I'll share. But right now, I wanted to relate some very recent happenings because it is officially fall, and things are changing. Now, this is a little video clip. I thought some of you might know that cedar waxwings are my favorite bird. In fact, they're my spirit bird. I had written a column about them several years ago. I had read gosh, it was probably 100 years ago, an account of cedar waxwings, and they used the term crapulent. It was a crapulent species, and you see a word like crapulent, you want to look it up. It means to excess. These birds do everything to excess. They eat too much. Sometimes they eat to the point where they can't fly anymore. Sometimes when they're eating berries that are fermented, they get a little tipsy too, and they can't fly either. Now, I took this as a good sign. This was the morning after I got back from vacation. I could see all kinds of commotion. My cat Jimmy was looking out the window at this tree. This is a northern red cedar. They're actually cedars. They're actually a juniper. But this is a tree that I should have, to be honest, cut down years ago. It's way outgrown its space in front of my house, but there was this is the reason why I leave it there. You can see here and up here and down here and all. There must have been a dozen or more cedar waxwings that landed in the tree Sunday morning. We've got some juveniles here. It's a little hard to see, but young cedar waxwings, they have a little bit of streaking on the breast. These guys looked really young, like they still had some down. Here's another one that's flown in. They're eating the cedar cones, which they look like berries, but they are classified as cones. And it was just so cool to see so many of these birds having a feast right in my front window. They would eat their fill, they'd be gone for a little while, and then they'd come back and they'd eat some more. I'm glad to say I've still got cedar berries there, so I'm hoping that I'll see them a time or two more before they go on to their next food source. What I wasn't able to see this time, and I have seen it 1 or 2 times in the past, is when birds line up, the cedar waxwings will line up on a branch and they'll pick those berry-like cones. And if there's a member of their flock that's perched near where there aren't any berries, they'll actually pass it along, like passing the bowl of peas down to the kid at the end. It's a really neat thing to see. And it's something to watch out for at this time of year. If you find yourself looking up at a big juniper like this, and also if you can keep an ear open. Now, my hearing is getting to the point where I'm finding it hard to hear the call of the cedar waxwing. They have a very high-pitched kind of it's almost like a breathy whistle that they make. But this time of year, they're traveling in large groups, and so if you're near a tree that has juicy fruits like this on it, keep an eye out, and maybe you'll be lucky enough to see cedar waxwings on the move. Now, this highlight comes courtesy of my dear next door neighbors, Audrey and Mike Tillmans. These pictures were taken actually the day I left on vacation. I don't think I mentioned up in the UP, cell signals are kind of spotty, and my phone hadn't made any noise after we'd gotten up into rural Wisconsin. Well, there we were in the grocery store in Menominee doing some shopping before we headed out to the cabin, and my phone rang, and it was Audrey, and she wanted to tell me about a bat that had shown up in their yard. Also give me a heads up in case my dogs were going to be going in the backyard. But she started off by saying that there was a dead bat in the yard. And it turns out to be not so dead. It actually ended up moving off of the patio and heading towards my yard. And I guess it flopped around a little bit this way and that way, and then it actually took off. So I don't know the habits of these bats. This is a silver-haired bat, and some of you might recall the school programs that we do here at the Park District. Now everything's on hold this year, but in past years we've done a program in the fall over at Delnor Woods Park called Forest Ecology, and every year we've found a silver-haired bat on the ground. So I don't know, the species isn't in any danger. It's not threatened, it's not endangered, but they sure have a heck of a time migrating. This bat is one of the group of bats that we call solitary bats. So it doesn't live in a colony. It's not the sort of bat that would live with its the rest of its family or its colony in your attic. These are bats that live singly in trees. They migrate from points north of here to points south of here. And by south, by north, I mean, Michigan, Wisconsin, southern Canada, and south, it could be Starved Rock, it could be southern Illinois. We're not talking about, crossing the Gulf of Mexico or anything. Their migration might be, 100 miles, 200 miles. But they seem to end up on the ground a lot, and I don't know why that is. But we can tell that it's a silver-haired bat because of these dark wings, this dark hair, and then the silver coloring. Audrey and Mike, and I believe you're tuned in tonight. I know you said you called it the silverback, and you were just about spot on with your identification. Silver-haired bats, I don't believe that they are present here in the summertime. I believe that they breed a little bit farther north, and but October is a time when we tend to see them as they're making their journey south. So keep your eyes open, look up, but also look down. You might find yourselves a silver-haired bat making its way south for the winter. Now, this is something that I cannot figure out. These are a couple different types of walnuts. One is very, very common. This is the chewed remains of a black walnut, Juglans nigra. And pretty much every block in every neighborhood around here has at least one black walnut tree. It's a favorite food of squirrels. Right now they're chewing open and eating some of the nuts, and they're burying the rest of them, some of which they'll find and some of which are going to turn into more walnut trees. But every year I find these others, and you can see, again, I didn't put my lip balm there for measurement, but these nuts are quite a bit larger. And to me, they look vaguely like the stone of a fruit, maybe the pit of a peach. But these are the nuts of a white walnut, which is in our area more commonly known as the butternut. And these, the way the black walnut is common, the butternut is very, very uncommon. In fact, the Morton arboretum, I tried to do a little research on this species to find out just how common they are. They list it as not recommended because it is highly susceptible to a fungus that causes a canker. It's a deadly disease for the tree, but butternut canker is something that it's quite prone to, and it doesn't survive. So the arb is saying, don't plant these because you're just going to end up disappointed. But somewhere in my neighborhood, there's a butternut tree, and I cannot figure out where it is. I thought I'd found it, and then that tree got cut down. So I thought that was going to be the end of the butternuts showing up in my yard, but they're back again. So it's got to be somewhere fairly close by. But challenge yourself to see if you can find the nuts of the white walnut, also known as the butternut. Over at the West Chicago Prairie, which is, let's see, that would be on the western border of West Chicago. You enter through an industrial park. And it's not Couts Road, it's the next stoplight east of there as you're heading towards, as you're heading east on Route 38. Name starts with K, it'll come to me. But anyway, there's a butternut tree growing there. That's about the only other one I can think of that's growing around here. They don't survive. And the fact that this one has lived long enough to produce fruit year after year, and it's befuddled me year after year, maybe this will be the year that I'll find it. And maybe you'll be lucky enough to find some butternuts too. I almost wonder if this tree might be resistant to that canker because it has been so prolific over the years. Anyway, butternuts and walnuts are quite plentiful right now. Black walnuts are quite plentiful right now. See if you can find yourselves a white walnut. Now, we're going to finish up with a couple of signs too that winter is coming and fall is the time when the insects prepare. And these two happen to prepare by heading inside. This guy here on the right is an invader to the United States. It first showed up in Allentown, Pennsylvania in 1998. So just a little over 20 years ago, and this thing has marched its way westward. It's the brown marmorated stink bug. And we do have brown stink bugs that are native to Illinois, but if you look closely at this one, you'll see it's got this checkerboard pattern here and this dark, where the wings protrude here. Our native brown stink bugs don't have all these extra details on them, but pretty much all we see these days are the brown marmorated stink bug, the BMSB. They, around here, unless you're a commercial fruit grower, they're really kind of more of a nuisance. But if you
you do happen to have an apple tree or berry bushes in your yard, these guys can wreak havoc. They have, as is true of all true bugs, they have a piercing and sucking mouth part that goes into the fruit and doesn't kill it really, but it makes it very unsightly and causes it to have bad spots in it. So again, if you're trying to grow things commercially, this can lead to some pretty steep losses because nobody wants to buy your ugly stink bug riddled fruit. I found this guy on the inside of my sliding door by my kitchen, which was a good reminder to me to keep that door closed. This guy was actually out on my deck. This is a Western conifer seed bug, and they don't have quite the reputation that the stink bugs have, but a lot of people, when they see these, they think that they are the kissing bug. Kissing bugs are a species of true bug that can actually pierce human skin. They can leave quite a welt. They don't, however, tend to occur in this area. Their range is expanding as southern species move northward, but kissing bugs are not common at all around here. If one did show up, it would probably be a hitchhiker from somebody who had traveled south. But every year I'll get calls or an email from someone who's afraid that they've got kissing bugs that are invading their house. These guys, as you can tell by the name, conifer seed bug, they feed primarily on the seeds of conifers. They have migrated eastward. They were a species of the West Coast, but they have come east as we've planted more and more conifers in this area. And they, just like the brown marmorated stink bug, they try to make their way indoors for the winter. Both of these bugs are programmed to find crevices where they can overwinter. And a lot of our houses have a lot of those crevices. The best defense against either one of these bugs, and by the way, neither one of them causes any damage indoors. Our indoor climate, especially as we get into winter when the humidity is very, very low, they don't last long in that indoor environment. You'll find them, especially the stink bugs, you'll find them trying to cluster in areas where the humidity might be a little bit higher, like by the sponge you keep by the kitchen sink, or maybe in a basement or an area where the humidity is higher. But they don't tend to last all that long in our dry indoor environments. But to prevent these guys, you can, if you see some of them clustered, say on the side of your house or something, you can brush them into a bucket of soapy water. The film on the top of the water that the soap creates is going to prevent them from climbing out and surviving. You can vacuum them up, although I've had people tell me that, at least in the case of the stink bug, then your vacuum smells stinky. But if it's at all possible to do a little outdoor, a check of your exterior of your house now while the weather's still good, you want to look for gaps around your windows, gaps around your doors, gaps at the eaves, gaps at your foundation, places that you might be able to caulk or have a handyman caulk for you, because that's going to be your best defense towards keeping these guys outside. They're not very big. They can squeeze through an opening that's less than 1/4 of an inch, close to 1/8 of an inch. So getting your windows tight, your doors tight, that's going to be your best defense towards keeping these visitors from spending some time with you. Now, I don't tend to get a whole lot in my house. I did find several underneath, I have a gas grill, and for some reason the cabinet underneath the grill must have held some moisture. I found maybe 3 or 4 dozen in there at the beginning of spring this past year, right about the time of the quarantine. I I don't know if that was a deterrent. I can't believe my house is so tight that they aren't coming in. Although I did replace my windows a couple of years ago, so maybe that helped. But keeping them out is your best defense against having them come in. With that, we'll stop the screen share and turn it over to you guys. Does anybody have any questions from this evening's program?
Yes.
Silvana, raise your hand.
I lived in Campton Hills for 10 years.
Uh-huh.
And I never saw one of the stink bugs. We had ladybugs and milkweed bugs.
Uh-huh.
And then we moved to this house in August, and I started seeing these stink bugs coming in.
Okay.
It is an older house, and I think it does need the help with the windows and doors and everything else. But they are really loud when they fly.
They are.
I didn't expect something so small makes such a tremendous noise. And my question about it is, once they're in, you said that they don't cause any damage. Do they multiply inside? Do they?
No, they're just looking for a place to pass the winter away.
What do they eat in that time, or do they not eat?
They don't. Yeah, they don't. They're looking for moisture. So bathroom sinks, kitchen sinks. But they would normally go into sort of a diapause, but once they get through the crevices into our house, diapause is like the insect version of hibernation. Once they get in there, then they realize that they're starting to dry out or desiccate, and they look for a place to get moisture. But they're not really feeding, so they're not really pooping, so they're not really leaving a lot of mess. I found they make great cat toys. I let my cat Jimmy bat them around, but they're amazing, and I use the term awesome as a term of respect. In less than 20 years, they have flown and conquered pretty much all of the eastern United States. So trying to think that we can make them go away isn't really realistic, but trying to keep them out of your house is. And I appreciate where you're coming from, Silvana. There could be, one person told me that they came down the chimney, and when they open the flue, they have this avalanche of stink bugs fall into their fireplace. They're driven by an instinct to find a crevice to overwinter in, and it's up to us to try and thwart that instinct as best we can.
Well, little do they know, I have an entomologist wannabe who will capture them all and keep them the whole winter as his pets. He did this with the stink with the ladybugs, and he found out that if you put a raisin with a cotton ball, just with a little bit of water, ladybugs will just happily live with you.
Oh,
so now I think he will do the same with the stink bugs.
Try it again. Let me know how it goes, because I've the one that would hang out, because like I said, I'll get one or two in my house, and I do get kind of used to seeing them. And in my house, it's by the sponge, by the sink, and I'll usually leave a little extra drop of water for them that they can, slurp up. I'm probably not being helpful, huh?
Well, one day I shall show you my refrigerator, where the freezer you open up and there's only bugs that have been frozen by my son, who is 9.
That's awesome.
Sometimes you cannot find chicken because there's so many bugs.
Well, sometimes we have an occasional segment on the show called What's in the Freezer. So maybe you can take that one week. That's cool. Anybody else? No? Chris?
Where can I find Osage oranges? I know I asked you this before. I've been all around that area, but
yeah, so I don't know if they've fallen yet, but so Osage oranges, some people call them hedge apples. They're those, and some people call them monkey brains. They're those green fruits that are about the size of a grapefruit. I saw a bunch of them on the trees, Chris, before I went on vacation. And it's a hedgerow on Peck Road. probably your best bet is to either just pull off of Peck Road, northbound Peck Road, but they're right by the Geneva Community Garden plots. So they would be on the tree line that's south of the community garden plots. And now I don't know ownership there. I think that's public land, and I don't believe they're considered a native species, so I'm pretty sure it's okay if you collect them. I know that they just tend to rot there and nobody's trying to propagate them. Osage oranges were grown as kind of natural property. They were an alternative to laying fence out and putting barbed wire in, because the trees themselves have some thorns on them that help contain cattle. They also serve to keep your neighbors at a distance, but the fruits, let's see, that would have been the last weekend in September. The fruits were still up on the trees when I saw them then, but they should be falling pretty soon. That
I know you said they were behind the dog park there by their garden plots over there.
Yeah, no, not the garden plots these are the Geneva garden plots on Peck Road. So, you know, there's Route 38 as you go north on Peck south on Peck. I'm getting my north and my south mixed up. You're going south on Peck Road. There's Route 38. There's the bus barn. There's some soccer fields. Then there's the Geneva Community Garden plots, and then there's the tree line. I'm sorry if I confused you, but it's the south border of the community garden plots.
Yeah, I know where that is. I was there the other day and I couldn't, so I'll go back.
Yeah, give it a try. And you know what? I'll try and pick some up too. One of the things I look for. And if anybody else knows of any, but that's the best source I know of.
Well, they're still great for spiders.
Yeah.
I use
Maybe
them
they work for stink bugs.
Yeah.
Sarah, did you have something?
Yeah, tell us about little brown snakes. We saw 3 of them today at Nelson Lake.
That's so
sunning
cool.
themselves on the path.
So little.
They were almost like worm size.
Yeah, so
they look small for even little browns.
Okay, they're probably the young of the year, and so snakes are just like the salamander we talked about earlier. It's a tricky time for them because they need to go into their hibernation period, which herpetologists now call brumation. I guess there's some details differences between how a reptile hibernates or goes through the winter versus how a mammal goes through the winter. So we use the term hibernate for mammals, and we use the term brumate for reptiles and amphibians. But so they want to make sure that they're going into, they've got enough, they've eaten enough that they're not going to go hungry because they're not going to be able to feed over the course of the winter. But they also want to make sure that they're not going into brumation with any food in their gut. So they need to warm up enough so that they can hunt, but then they also need to process that food fairly quickly, because anything that's left in their digestive tract that's not fully processed and eliminated, if it's still remaining there, there's a chance it could rot and the snake could die. So these little guys, insects are still plentiful, and that's what brown snakes are eating. So they need to warm up. What time of day was this, Sarah? Was it early in the day? Like 10, 11?
No, like 3:30.
3:30. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe they were done feeding and they were just trying to use whatever warmth they could find to help process what's in their body so they can get it out of there again. But it's, yeah, and they're also probably the number one species that we see in the springtime too on trails, where they're so small. The advantage is that they can warm up pretty quickly. They don't have a lot of mass that they have to bulk up and warm up. But I think a lot of them end up getting killed too because they get stepped on and they get run over on the trails.
Yeah, one of them was not moving.
Not so good.
The other guys were moving fine.
Well, yeah, it's that time of year where they're trying to make the most of the time they have left before they're not going to be able to feed anymore. But it's a tricky getting enough food in and still having enough time to get that food out so that they'll survive the winter. Good questions. Anybody else? If not, great to see everybody. We will be back next week with a little bit more about Michigan. I think I've got a little bit more spider things to talk about. We're going to talk about birds of prey and how they are leaving their parents and having to strike out on their own. We've got some statistics, sobering statistics about mortality rates. And who knows what else will happen over the course of the coming week. But glad to see everybody, and I'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thank you.
Thanks,
See you next week.
Pam.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, Pam.
Bye, Chris.